They called him Old Pete, just another worn-out security guard checking student IDs at the campus gate. 20 years on the job, same faded uniform, same quiet demeanor. Students barely glanced at him as they hurried past. But when 3 armed men tried to storm the university library, those same students watched in stunned silence as this harmless old man moved with lethal precision that could only come from one place. And suddenly, everyone realized they'd been protected by someone whose past was far deadlier than anyone imagined. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we continue with this powerful story of hidden identity and silent protection, tell me in the comments from which city are you watching this video today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who served in silence. The morning shift started the same way it had for 20 years. Pete Morrison arrived at Riverside University at 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes before his shift officially began. He liked the quiet campus at that hour, when the only sounds were distant maintenance crews and the occasional early jogger cutting through the quad. At 62, Pete moved with the deliberate pace of a man who'd learned that rushing rarely solved anything. His uniform was regulation navy blue, pressed but showing its age around the edges. The security badge on his chest read P. Morrison, Campus Security in block letters, nothing more. No rank, no decorations, no hint of anything beyond 2 decades of checking IDs and walking round. Students who bothered to notice him at all saw exactly what they expected. Another lifer in campus security, counting down to retirement. Pete's post was the main gate, a glass booth positioned at the primary entrance to campus where all visitors had to stop. Through his window, he watched the morning crowd build, professors clutching coffee cups, administrative staff scrolling through phone, and the endless stream of students who moved past his booth like water around a stone. Most didn't acknowledge him beyond flashing their student IDs. To them, he was furniture. The morning routine was predictable. Check IDs, direct visitors to parking, answer the occasional question about building locations. Pete handled it all with the same calm efficiency, his voice never rising above conversational level. Good morning. ID, please. Thank you. Have a good day. The same pattern, thousands of times over the years. What students didn't notice was how his eyes moved, how he tracked movement patterns, noted unfamiliar faces, registered vehicles that lingered too long in visitor parking. They didn't see how he positioned himself in the booth to maintain clear sight lines to multiple approaches, or how his radio was always within immediate reach. To them, he was just Old Pete, harmless, invisible, forgettable. Around 9 a.m., the morning rush typically died down to a manageable flow. This Tuesday was no different. Pete processed the usual mix of late-arriving students and visiting professors when a black sedan pulled up to the visitors' entrance. 3 men in dark clothing stepped out, moving with purpose toward the main campus entrance. Something about their approach caught Pete's attention, not their clothing or their pace, but the way they scanned the area. Professional, systematic, tactical. Pete's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. His right hand moved closer to his radio while his eyes tracked the 3 men. They approached his window with forced casualness, the lead man producing what appeared to be university identification. "We're here for a meeting in the administration building," the man said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Professor Williams is expecting us." Pete examined the ID carefully. The photo looked recent, but something felt wrong. The lamination was too new, the edges too clean. After 20 years of checking thousands of IDs, Pete had developed an instinct for forgeries. This one was good, but not perfect. "I'll need to call Professor Williams to confirm," Pete said evenly, reaching for his phone. The man's smile faded slightly. "That won't be necessary. We're already late." "University policy," Pete replied, his tone unchanged. "All visitors must be verified." The second man stepped closer to the window, and Pete caught a glimpse of something under his jacket, the outline of a shoulder holster. Pete's training, dormant but never forgotten, kicked in automatically. His left hand moved to the silent alarm button while his right stayed near the radio. "Is there a problem?" the third man asked, his voice carrying an edge. "No problem at all," Pete said, punching numbers on his phone with deliberate slowness. "Just following procedure." What happened next took less than 5 seconds but felt like slow motion. The lead man's hand moved toward his jacket. Pete's muscle memory, honed over decades and never fully erased, took over. He hit the silent alarm with his left hand while grabbing his radio with his right, his voice cutting through the morning air with sudden authority. "Code red, main gate. 3 armed suspects. Lockdown protocol. Now." The transformation was instantaneous. The quiet, aging security guard disappeared, replaced by someone moving with lethal efficiency. Pete was out of his booth before the men could process what was happening, his body positioning cutting off their direct route route to campus while giving him cover behind a concrete barrier. "Security! Drop your weapons and get on the ground!" The voice that emerged was nothing like the gentle "good morning" students were used to hearing. This voice carried command authority, the kind that cut through chaos and demanded immediate compliance. Several students who'd been walking nearby froze in confusion, unable to reconcile the Pete they knew with the man now barking orders like a military commander. The three men hesitated, clearly not expecting resistance from what they'd assumed was an easy target. That hesitation cost them the initiative. Campus police sirens wailed in the distance, responding to Pete's alert. The university's lockdown system activated, sealing buildings and alerting everyone on campus to take shelter. "I said get down!" Pete shouted, his positioning forcing the men into an exposed area with limited escape routes. Students scattered, some pulling out phones to record, others simply running. But all of them stopped thinking of Pete as just a harmless old man. The lead gunman made his move, reaching for his weapon. Pete was already moving. 20 years of campus security combined with skills much older and harder earned. He tackled the first man before the gun cleared its holster, the impact driving both of them to the ground. The other two men drew their weapons, but found themselves facing campus police units arriving from 3 directions. "Drop your weapons! Hands where we can see them." The standoff lasted perhaps 30 seconds. Surrounded, outgunned, and with their element of surprise gone, the 2 remaining men surrendered. Pete rolled off the first attacker, the man's weapon secured and the threat neutralized. As campus police took the suspects into custody, a crowd of students had gathered at a safe distance, phones out, recording everything. They watched in stunned silence as Pete calmly dusted off his uniform and walked back toward his booth, his movements returning to the measured pace they were used to seeing. "Mr. Morrison," called Officer Sarah Chen, the lead campus police responder. "Are you injured?" "I'm fine," Pete replied, straightening his name tag. These 3 were attempting armed entry into campus with forged identification. "The weapons are secured." Officer Chen stared at him for a moment. She'd worked campus security for 5 years and had never seen anything like what just happened. "Where did you learn to move like that?" Pete looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Long time ago, different job." As the suspects were loaded into police vehicles and the immediate threat passed, word of what happened spread across campus like wildfire. Videos taken by students showed the dramatic transformation of the quiet security guard they'd ignored for years. Social media exploded with posts trying to make sense of what they'd witnessed. "Did you see how fast he moved? That wasn't normal security guard training. Who is this guy?" Professor Williams, the faculty member whose name the suspects had used, arrived at the scene 30 minutes later. She found Pete back in his booth, processing normal campus traffic as if nothing had happened. "Pete," she said, approaching his window. "I heard what happened. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Professor. Just doing my job." "That wasn't just doing your job," she pressed. "Where did you learn to handle armed suspects like that?" Pete looked up from his clipboard, meeting her eyes directly. "Army," he said simply. "Special Forces. Long time ago." The revelation hit Professor Williams like a physical blow. Special Forces. Green Beret. She'd walked past this man hundreds of times, never knowing she was greeting someone who'd served in the most elite units of the U.S. military. "How long?" she asked quietly. 22 years active duty, Pete replied. "Retired as a Sergeant Major in 2003. Been here ever since." "Pete, why didn't you ever say anything?" Pete shrugged. A gesture students had seen countless times but never understood. Wasn't relevant. That was then. This is now. But Professor Williams wasn't satisfied with that answer. That evening, she made some calls. By morning, she had confirmation of what Pete had told her, though the details were largely classified. Sergeant Major Peter Morrison, U.S. Army Special Forces. Multiple deployments to classified locations. Distinguished Service Cross recipient. A career spent in the shadows, protecting people who never knew his name. The next day, campus was buzzing with rumors and speculation. Videos of the incident had gone viral, with millions of views and countless shares. News outlets picked up the story of the secret hero security guard, but Pete wasn't there to see any of it. He'd called in sick, the first sick day he'd taken in 5 years. Pete spent the day at home, a modest apartment near campus that reflected the same understated presence he maintained at work. The walls held a few photographs, military units in desert camouflage, faces of men long dead, moments frozen from a life he'd left behind. His distinguished Service Cross sat in a wooden box on his dresser, along with other medals he'd never displayed. The phone rang constantly, reporters wanting interviews, university administrators wanting meetings, former colleagues who'd seen the news. Pete ignored them all. He'd spent 20 years building a quiet life, and now that quiet was shattered. When he returned to work the following day, everything had changed. Students who'd walked past him for years suddenly wanted to talk, to ask questions, to thank him for his service. Campus administrators offered him promotions, better positions, recognition ceremonies. Pete declined them all. "I appreciate the sentiment," he told the dean of students, "but I like my job just fine as it is." "But Pete," the dean pressed, "you're overqualified for security work. With your background, you could teach, consult, lead training programs." "Ma'am," Pete interrupted gently, "I've been exactly where I want to be for 20 years. That hasn't changed. What had changed was how people saw him. Students approached his booth with new respect, curiosity, even reverence. Some thanked him for his service. Others asked about his military career. Pete answered when appropriate, deflected when necessary, and maintained the same professional demeanor he'd always shown. One morning, a young ROTC cadet named Marcus Johnson stopped at Pete's booth. Unlike most students, Marcus had military bearing, straight posture, crisp movements, respectful address. "Mr. Peter Morrison, sir," Marcus said, standing at attention. "At ease, cadet," Pete replied. "What can I do for you?" "Sir, I wanted to thank you for what you did. And, if it's not inappropriate to ask, could you tell me about Special Forces training?" Pete studied the young man for a moment. He saw something familiar in Marcus's eyes. The hunger for purpose, the desire to serve something greater than himself. "Walk with me on my rounds tonight," Pete said. "We'll talk." That evening, Marcus joined Pete for his patrol of campus. As they walked the quiet paths between buildings, Pete shared stories he'd never told before. Not about classified missions or secret operations, but about leadership, about the weight of responsibility, about the quiet satisfaction of protecting people who never knew they needed protection. "The thing about Special Forces," Pete explained as they paused near the library where the incident had occurred, "isn't the training or the weapons or the tactics. It's about becoming someone others can depend on, completely and without question." "Is that why you stayed here?" Marcus asked. "To keep protecting people?" Pete looked out across the campus, lights glowing in dorm windows where students studied late into the night, safe and unaware of the dangers that existed in the world beyond their academic bubble. "These kids," he said finally, "they get to focus on their futures because people like us worry about their present. That's worth something." Marcus nodded, understanding beginning to dawn in his expression. "You never really retire from that mindset, do you?" "No," Pete agreed. "You just find different ways to serve." As weeks passed, the media attention faded, but the change on campus was permanent. Students greeted Pete by name now. Professors stopped to chat, and everyone understood that the quiet man in the security booth was someone special. The university offered to rename the main gate in his honor, but Pete declined. "I'm not looking for recognition," he told the university president. "I'm looking to do my job." The job itself evolved, though. Pete began working with campus police on security protocols, sharing insights from his military experience. He helped train other security personnel, teaching them to recognize threats and respond effectively. The university, once vulnerable to the kind of attack the three men had planned, became a model for campus security nationwide. Students still hurried past his booth each morning, but now many of them took a moment to wave, to say good morning, to acknowledge the man who watched over them. Pete appreciated the recognition, but what mattered most to him remained unchanged. Another day keeping his people safe, another shift completed without incident. 1 year after the incident, Professor Williams stopped by Pete's booth during her morning routine. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About the quiet life being over?" Pete considered the question while processing a visitor's ID. Campus around them buzzed with its usual energy. Students heading to class, professors discussing research, life continuing in its normal, peaceful rhythm. "No regrets," he said finally. "Sometimes quiet isn't about being invisible. Sometimes it's about being so reliable that people can take safety for granted." He handed the visitor their temporary pass and returned his attention to the campus beyond his window. Another day, another shift, another opportunity to serve. For Pete Morrison, that was enough. 20 years of anonymity had ended in 5 seconds of action, but the mission remained the same. Different uniform, different battlefield, same dedication to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. And in the end, that's all any warrior really asks for: the chance to stand watch, to be the guardian between the innocent and the darkness, whether anyone knows their name or not. The students hurrying past his booth that morning had no idea their safety depended on a man who'd once protected national security in the world's most dangerous places. But Pete knew, and that knowledge was enough. 6 months after the incident, the university received an unexpected visitor. General Patricia Hayes arrived in an unmarked car, wearing civilian clothes that couldn't quite disguise her military bearing. She'd flown flown in from Washington specifically to meet with Pete Morrison, a man she hadn't seen in 15 years. Pete was finishing his morning shift when the general approached his booth. Recognition was instant and mutual. "Sergeant Major Morrison," she said quietly. "General Hayes," Pete replied, standing straighter than he had in years. "Ma'am, walk with me, Pete. We need to talk." They walked across campus in comfortable silence until they reached a bench overlooking the quad where the incident had taken place. General Hayes studied the area with a tactical eye before speaking. "I saw the footage," she said. "The news reports didn't do it justice. That was textbook room clearing, threat assessment, and tactical positioning. After 20 years in civilian life," Pete shrugged. "Some things don't fade." "No, they don't." The general turned to face him directly. "That's why I'm here. Do you remember Operation Nightfall, Kandahar, 2001? Pete's expression grew serious. Nightfall had been classified at the highest levels, a joint operation that had prevented a major terrorist attack on American soil. Very few people knew the full details. I remember. The team leader on that mission just retired. We need someone to take over training the next generation of Special Forces operators. Someone who understands that the mission never really ends. It just changes location." Pete was quiet for a long moment, watching students cross the quad on their way to classes. "General, I appreciate the offer, but I have responsibilities here." "I know about your responsibilities, Pete. 20 years of perfect service, 0 incidents until 3 armed men tried to breach your campus. You've built something here worth protecting." She paused. "But there are bigger threats coming. Things these kids will never see. Dangers they'll never know about, unless people like us stand in the way." "What exactly are you asking?" "Part-time consulting. Help us train operators for domestic protection scenarios, campus security, soft targets, places where traditional military response isn't viable. Your experience here, combined with your SF background, makes you uniquely qualified." Pete considered this. The offer meant traveling, leaving his post periodically, disrupting the quiet routine he'd built. But it also meant expanding his ability to protect people, sharing knowledge that could save lives far beyond Riverside University. "The university would have to approve any outside work," Pete said finally. "Already cleared it with the dean. They're honored to have their head of security consulting with the Department of Defense." General Hayes smiled. "Didn't know you'd been promoted, did you?" Pete blinked. "Promoted?" "Effective immediately. Pete Morrison, Director of Campus Security, comes with a raise, an office, and the authority to implement security protocols across the entire university system. Your response to that attack didn't just save lives, Pete. It exposed vulnerabilities in campus security nationwide. The Department of Education wants your expertise." The magnitude of what she was saying began to sink in. His quiet life as a gate guard was over, replaced by responsibilities he'd never sought but was uniquely qualified to handle. What would the consulting involve? Teaching, training scenarios based on real-world threats, helping develop response protocols for educational institutions. Some of it would be classified, but nothing you haven't handled before. She leaned forward. "Pete, campus attacks are increasing. Soft targets are becoming primary objectives for domestic terrorists. We need someone who understands both environments, military precision and civilian protection." Pete thought about Marcus, the young ROTC cadet who'd been walking rounds with him, learning leadership principles, about Professor Williams, who still stopped by his booth each morning, about the thousands of students who now felt safer because they knew someone was watching over them. "How often would I be away?" 1 week per month, initially. Training rotations at Bragg, Quantico, and a classified facility in Virginia. The rest of the time, you'd be here implementing new security measures and serving as a liaison between federal agencies and university system. A group of students walked past their bench, laughing about something, completely carefree. Pete watched them for a moment before responding. "I'll need guarantees about campus coverage when I'm away. My people here come first." "Understood. We'll coordinate with local law enforcement and provide additional security personnel during your absences." General Hayes stood, extending her hand. "So you'll do it?" Pete shook her hand, the gesture sealing an agreement that would change his life again. "Yes, ma'am." "Outstanding. Your first rotation starts next month. You'll be briefing a class of SF candidates on urban protection scenarios. Some of them aren't much older than your students here." As General Hayes walked away, Pete remained on the bench, processing what had just happened. In 6 months, he'd gone from invisible security guard to campus hero to federal consultant. The quiet life he'd cherished was evolving into something larger, more complex, but still fundamentally the same, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. His radio crackled with routine campus traffic. Pete stood, straightened his uniform, and walked back toward his booth. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, new ways to serve. But today, there were still IDs to check and students to keep safe. The mission continued, just on a larger scale. Another quiet morning at Riverside University. Another day of being exactly where he belonged.